Today we're going to chat about me quitting my job in my 30s to be an influencer. Oh my gosh. What's up, guys? If you're new here, my name is Aisha Beasley and I am still kind of newish to YouTube. I mean, I've been kind of doing this for a minute on and off, but we're going to chat today. So I've been full-time for about 1.5 years now, which is so crazy. I feel like time goes by so fast. And it's been interesting. I feel like there's been a lot of ups and downs, you know, when you're taking something that was just a fun side hustle, fun hobby, and you're actually making it your job, which is what I did, and I'm still doing. So we're gonna sip some kava, which is like literally my favorite thing to drink. It's like, if you don't know anything about kava, you should get onto it. How I got to this point to quit my job and do social media full time, you know, because I think that it's truly an awesome thing. It's a blessing to be able to take something that was once a hobby into a full-time thing where you're making money and you're able to support yourself. And I think a case for me, which was a little bit different, is I had to really get my finances in order on my own. I didn't have any help. I didn't have, parent support. I literally had to do this on my own. And I have to say that, like, doing this as a job is really different. It's obviously doing social media, being an influencer is in general not that hard. Like, let's be real, like, you're not doing construction, you're not having to clock in and clock out. But I think, it comes with its own, ups and downs. And, sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? We're gonna start at the beginning because here's a little bit of backstory. I've actually been doing social media on and off since the Tumblr days. I had a Tumblr, I had a blog. I loved it. I was, at the time in the early 2010s, I was really inspired by fashion bloggers and just what they were doing at the time. It seemed so cool. And this is kind of when influencers were starting to get invited to events. They were also getting invited to Fashion Week. And I was following these Tumblr girls and bloggers at the time on their journey. And two people come in mind: Rumi Neely and Brian Boy, which Brian Boy, he's still popping off. He's still very active on TikTok. I follow him on there, but I was obsessed. I was obsessed with them. I was obsessed with just the things that they were doing. And I thought that was goals, but I just didn't think it would be very realistic for me. At the time, at the time I was like in my early 20s and I was in college and I was also starting to work retail. So I just never really thought it would be an actual thing for me. But I was doing Tumblr on the side, grew a micro following, and it was just fun. And then I kind of stopped that for a while. I started kind of grinding with my 9-to-5. I was working retail. I had dreams to be a fashion buyer and kind of move up the corporate ladder. So as I was working retail, I became a visual merchandiser and just kind of continued on that path and, really had strong aspirations to get to that level where I would go to fashion shows and, get to call the shots on what goes into all the stores. That was the ultimate goal here. And then in 2017, I started a new Instagram account. I had my personal, but I had someone, it was actually at the time a guy I was dating. He was like, hey, you talk about blogging all the time. Maybe you should just like start another Instagram account and just kind of share your life, your clothes, whatever, whatever you want to share. And I was like, I don't don't know. I was very reluctant, but I was talking about it with my sister for the longest time. You know, we were talking on and off about it, and she's just like, why don't you just make the account? And I'm like, okay, I'll make the account. So I made the account and just kind of started posting photos on Instagram. This was pre-TikTok and all of the things that happened, you know, in 2020 with, you know, short form video. So I was just posting my life living in Tucson. That's where I'm from, grew up, Arizona native, born and raised, grew up in Tucson, and I just started to post, you know, content. And within that space, I, you know, started to connect with other local influencers or bloggers at the time, and started just to connect with them and kind of build this little community. And it was really cool. It was really cool. And it was just so fun. I got to meet some really cool people locally, and I actually got to connect with other, you know, bloggers and influencers, you know, through the internet, through the web, and it was a fun time. So as I was growing this micro following on Instagram, I started to get brand outreach, which was pretty crazy. And I just didn't think having 5,000 followers at the time. Now it's like you can be a nano influencer, micro influencer, and get paid and get sponsorships and gifting. But back like 6-7 years ago, it still was kind of a new thing. When I thought about people being on PR lists and getting gifting, I just thought that was people who had hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, or they were YouTubers, you know, because I was very inspired by YouTubers at the time. So I thought that was just a thing for them. And then when I got these small brands that were reaching out to me, they're like, hey, we want to send you this bag. My first campaign was me in this little travel tote bag, which I still have somewhere to this day. I got to find it, but I'm like, I'm gonna keep this forever because that was my first company that reached out to me. That was the first sponsorship I ever had. And I just thought that was so cool. My passion for content creation just started to grow. And at the time I was planning to move to Phoenix, and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to be in a bigger city, you know, coming from Tucson. I'm going to continue to just see what happens with this. So I moved out to Phoenix, which is currently where I live now. I moved out here for my job. And the biggest goal for me, being almost 30, because I was 29 at the time, being almost 30 was, I'm hitting a wall at my job. I'm not making much as a visual merchandiser because that was my full-time job. I need to get out of Tucson and I need to get better opportunities. And so I took a transfer out here and I made the leap to Phoenix. And I also had this, you know, small social media account at the time that I was like, you know what? Maybe there'll be better opportunities out here for that, because I was already, you know, getting some gifting. I was already getting a little bit of pay from brands like here and there, which at the time, when we're looking at the late 2010s, being paid as a micro influencer was still kind of, it's not like it is now, where if you're a nano influencer or a micro influencer, you should get paid for your work. But at that time, it was a lot harder to get paid from brands, you know, and I was kind of negotiating and doing my own thing, and I was getting some solid side income from working with brands, and some large brands at that, which was really cool because I was using a lot of the influencer marketing platforms. You know, this is when Aspire IQ was really up and coming, and I think 4 was popping up, and there was a lot of platforms at the time where you could take on trade and gifting, and then you can also get paid to do it. So I was really utilizing that and hustling because I wasn't making much at my job. So after I got out here, I already knew of some creators out here at the time, but I didn't really know too many people who were doing social media. And I remember one specific influencer DM'd me. They're like, hey, we're gonna have this kind of like food event, just kind of like a creator meetup, shoot content, do your thing, and you just post about it. And I was like, okay, first off, it's a free meal. I was like, that's perfect because I'm extremely broke. And second, that's awesome. I get to finally meet other people out here. And so it was really cool because I started to connect with other people in the area. And when that happened, it just really made me realize, I'm like, wow, okay, there is opportunities out here, and I can maybe grow my account even more out here and kind of see what happens. Fast forward, COVID hit. I started creating videos on TikTok locally out here in Arizona. And then that trickled into Reels, and my Reels took off. So in January of 2023, I left my job of over 11 years to be a full-time influencer. It's so crazy. And you guys, I never thought I would leave my full-time job to do social media full-time. It just seems so crazy, especially when you think about someone who's in their 30s, just leaving their job and just going to be an influencer. It just seems less safe, and it can be. And I want to talk about a few things that you can do if you're interested in quitting your job, taking on social media. Just someone in my POV, I quit my job to do TikTok and Instagram full time. I know we see a lot about YouTube and, the opportunities with YouTube, which I will agree are probably going to be better and probably even more consistent income for you. But if you're growing on Instagram or TikTok, I can give you guys some tips on how you can leverage your platforms. If you want to quit your job and sustain being an influencer, here's a couple of things that you should be prepared for. Okay, so for me, I relied heavily on brand deals, and I've been very successful with landing really large, sometimes 5-figure deals and working with larger brands. I wouldn't suggest that being your sole source of income. And there's so many videos out there that can explain more on how you should have multiple sources of income as a content creator, because brand deals are fleeting. There's months where it's popping, and I've had months like that. It's popping, and I'm landing deal after deal after deal. And then there's months where it's crickets. It's a little dry. So I would say definitely be prepared to have a good amount of savings. Personally, I would have maybe close to 6 months of savings that will cover your expenses, rent, food, gas. And then I would also make sure that you have consistent income coming in as a content creator. So those are a couple of things I made sure I had before I walked away from my job. I made sure my savings was pretty good. And then I also was kind of tracking what was coming in each month. I was seeing like, okay, like it's rolling, it's good. I can probably at least dip my toes in this for 6 months or whatever. And then if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to my job or find a new job within that field. I wasn't really concerned about that. So I would say definitely make sure you have those two things first. Because I will tell you guys, don't be like me and don't think that just because you're on your high horse, you're just getting these deals, that there aren't going to be months where it's going to be a little bit slower. And I've experienced that throughout the last 1.5 years plus that I've been doing this, and it is kind of scary, okay? And I think that comes with the territory when you're doing anything on your own, you're freelancing, you're an entrepreneur, not every month is going to be the same. And I know we see these very large creators who are like Alex Earl level and they have the millions of followers and then they're doing all these things, and it's very, very possible, and I'm not saying it isn't possible, and just be very aware that not every month is going to be the same, and also try to plan correctly with your finances. So if one month you're making like, let's say 20K, and then the next month you're making 10K, and then maybe the next month you're making 5K, just make sure you're planning your expenses accordingly. You're not living above your means. You're not out just blowing your money, because if you're blowing that 20K on trips, handbags, designer stuff, and then you notice that the next couple of months are a little bit more slower and you're not making that money, you just want to make sure that you're still covering yourself in cases of when brand deals are a little bit slower. And sometimes they are, sometimes right at the very beginning of the year, they're a little slower, because holiday season is a very strong time for creators to make the most money, just because the brands are just coming out the woodworks for different campaigns, but it kind of slows down at the very beginning of the year. And then it kind of maybe picks back up in spring, maybe slows down a little bit in the summer. And then when we get into fall and holiday, that's pretty much the most lucrative time to be a content creator, just because that's when the brands are coming in with the large budgets. So just make sure you're financially preparing for that. And then that's something that I'm not going to say I blew all my money, but there was, you just feel like you're just kind of on this high, and then you're like, dang, it's a little slow. And I was smart and I didn't blow all my money. I put some in savings, but you're kind of, you get kind of that rush of like, okay, I made this much this month. And then you're like, oh, okay, only maybe one brand deal came in, and it's like this kind of up and down thing. And that's stressful, especially, being in my 30s, and it's embarrassing. I'm not going to say my parents and family would never help me if things hit the fan, but you don't want to be in a position in your 30s to be like, hi, mom and dad, I need money because I need to pay my bills. And they freaking know you quit your job to be a social media influencer. You don't want to be like that. So another thing is, definitely plan for your future. Save the money that's coming in, because you just don't know. Another thing is, which, I think it's important, I do recognize the burnout that comes with being a creator, especially not even in the YouTube space, but also in just doing short form content, because short form content it moves so fast. Trends move fast. You feel like you constantly have to pop a video out daily. YouTube, I know there's a lot of pressure with creators being like, man, I have to edit these long videos and I'm trying to post 1 to 2 times a week. Being a short form creator, having to post daily and keeping up with the trends and going to the newest, hottest places. And I feel that burnout, and it's hard, because when you're a short form creator, especially on TikTok and Instagram, there really isn't that money backing that you get like on YouTube, with their, with how they pay creators. And you are heavily relying more on brand deals on TikTok and Instagram than you are, specifically on YouTube, because, once you hit that one milestone, you can obviously monetize your videos. So for me, it's just been a lot of the pressure to constantly create in order to sustain an income. And that's something that I would have to say I also kind of wish I would have taken into the consideration, because when this was just a side hobby for me and I was having fun, there was still that full-time income. There was still my health insurance. There was still, I knew every 2 weeks I was going to get paid. And when you're an influencer, it's different. Sometimes brands don't pay, based off of your contract terms. It could be a net 60, it could be a net 90. In a perfect world, I would love a net 30. And that's not always the case with some of these brands. And so that's another thing that kind of puts you on edge. And I think that's why it's so important to diversify your income if you want to do this full time, especially when you're, a lot older and, there's a little bit more risk involved. And I think, knowing what I know now, I definitely would have planned better to maybe have other like assets beyond just doing TikTok and Instagram. So it's fun and I love it, but it's also like, dang, you really got to pump out the content and you really got to continue to stay relevant, especially on these other platforms where people's attention spans are like this. You know what I'm saying? And it can be hard. And, there's times where I'm kind of like, did I make the right decision to leave a job and just do this? Obviously you just do not want to just solely rely on brand deals. So I think a good happy medium is if you were looking to leave the corporate world, maybe take on something part-time or look for a flexible remote job to where you're still able to work from home, edit videos, create content. You have a little bit more freedom, and that way you don't feel obligated to just 100% leave the corporate world or 100% just go all in. And some people are like that. You could totally go all in, and that's kind of what I did. I just was like, okay, I have the savings, I have this, I'm just gonna go in. But if you want to kind of assess your income for the next maybe 3 to 6 months, maybe take on like a little part-time gig, work at Starbucks, be a barista, I don't know, maybe not work at Starbucks because I know there's drama with Starbucks, but just a coffee shop, work at a coffee shop, have a little side income just for cushion, or you could obviously DoorDash, Uber Eats, drive Uber, drive Lyft, do those things. Another thing is, and I think this is something that is kind of making a larger comeback than what it was in the beginning. And I kind of wish back in like 2017, 2018, when I was growing my account on Instagram, is LTK Like to Know It and affiliate, like doing reward style. And I know a lot of creators who are doing LTK and stuff like that who are making a killing, and it's not going anywhere and it's just gotten bigger. I slept on a lot of that early on in my influencer career, and now I'm trying to kind of play catch up with that, because obviously that is another stream of income. If you're sharing your clothes and you're sharing things that you like already on your platforms, why not make sure those things are linked for your followers to buy from you? Because that is commission, that is additional money that you're making on top of brand deals. And I do know someone personally who really blew up big in like 2020, 2021 doing Amazon, and she makes 6 figures just with her affiliate stuff that she links on Amazon and sharing it on Instagram and TikTok. So definitely do not sleep on that, especially if you are trying to sustain income. Another thing that you can offer your audience is like some type of digital product. So if you're talking about how to grow on social media, or you're talking about anything, you could be talking about building Legos and you could create an ebook, some type of asset that you can give to your audience is additional income that they could, buy or support, you. That also could be merch, it could be things like that, to where there's some other sources of income coming through. And I think that we see this a lot with larger creators who end up starting their own brands, whether that's makeup, clothing line, beauty, fragrances. We're seeing all the things from these larger creators, because it's so important to, understand that like there may be a time where you're like, you know what, I just don't want to post for a while. Kind of want to take a break. But you know that if you take a break, that could maybe take a large hit on your income. And having some other type of asset outside of social media is, I think, really important in today's age, especially because it's a beautiful thing that everybody can do this, right? We all can set up our camera, set up our tripod, and film videos and make money, you know? But I think now that there's so many creators, we're just kind of like moving through creators. It's so fast paced and it's causing people to burn out. I think it's really, really important for you to have other assets to where if you want to take a break or maybe you want to shift in another direction and you're like, well, maybe I want to even change my content up. You know, I don't want to talk about beauty. You know, I want to talk about this other hobby I fell in love with. I fell in love with fitness, and you're afraid to switch niches because you're like, well, my core audience likes me for this. This is what pays my bills. I don't want to switch up because it could hurt me, you know, it could hurt opportunities, it could hurt all these things. And I also think it's important to have those assets because you just don't know when you may not want to do the things you're doing anymore, but you still want to maybe do content, but you just want to do it in a different niche or in a different level. Who knows? But those would be some of my suggestions. And if you guys don't know, I'm most known for like a lot of my Arizona content, specifically in food and experiences and things to do. That's how people know me. And, you know, I've been able to develop a very strong audience on Instagram and TikTok from it. And, you know, I always kind of think about, is this like it? Because it's so scary to change niches or like switch things around because you're like, okay, well, maybe I want to talk about this, but you know, I'm known for this. It's interesting. Social media is so interesting, but I love it. And I've been doing it for so long. And, you know, I'm truly blessed that I've been able to like do this as a job and try this out because it's just been such a fun thing and a fun experience. And yeah, I don't know if these were tips. I don't even know how to label this video fully, but it's just my my thoughts on social media and doing this as a job. So yeah.